So I remember there was this book that I read, right? A few years ago. It was called The Symbiotic Fascination. It's a great book. Really fucking crazy. So this book was fucking crazy as hell, man. I had never read anything like it ever during that time period. I think I was about 18, maybe 19, I don't know, when I started getting into reading novels, these horror novels. And this book is written so well, man. It's about this dude and this girl. It's kind of like a weird, twisted, fucked up love story. So it's got this guy. His name is Arcan Tyler, right? So Arcan, um, when he was a kid, when he was a teenager or something like this, or I think when he was a kid, his dad had left the family because he couldn't take being with the mother anymore. And he said, "Well, why is this?" Well, the mother was a shapeshifter. So she shape shifted into these like weird shapes. Like she was like animal but like human at the same time or something like this. And he couldn't deal with it. It was just too fucking insane and bizarre for him. So he left. And so he left little Arcan and the mother. But then the mother started having sex with Arcan against his will. And what ended up happening was she passed on the spirits that was inside of her to him. And so then Arcan, he had a at the time the spirits were like baby spirits or something, but they grew as he grew. And so the fucking what is it? He had a ghoul, a wolf, and a cat. And so he grew up hating women because of this. He hated his mother and he hated women because of this. So pretty much his mother created a fucking monster. So the fucking ghoul was the one that gave him the ability to create to what is it? To commit really fucking atrocious acts against his victims. The cat gave him the ability to sneak around and not be detected and be slick. And then the wolf gave him the ability to have a fucking really crazy mean ass erection and this fucking and his ferocity, right? So he was possessed by these fucking things, right? So he became a fucking rapist and he would fucking go into these women's houses and rape them and stuff like this. Do crazy shit. Cut fucking people's tits off, flush it down the toilet while they were watching, all sorts of crazy ass shit. And so, but what ended up happening was he, every time he would do this type of thing, that person's spirit would get tied to him. And so everywhere he went, he would have like 50 or more female spirits following him around. While the women in their everyday life, they were like almost like empty shells because he had their souls now. And they were chained to him by these spiritual chains. And so these ghosts would follow him everywhere he went. So he had no peace. But he couldn't help himself because he was so filled with hatred. He just kept doing it and acquiring more and more spirits that would fucking follow him around and shit. And so he ended up working at this department store like Macy's or something like this. And there he met this woman named Tawny Delaney. And Tawny Delaney was like 5'11". She was still a virgin at like 33 because nobody found her attractive. She was tall, she was kind of unkept looking. She was very shy and she wanted desperately for somebody to fall to, take her to bed or to be in love with somebody, but she had no one. And she really desperately wanted this, and she secretly liked Arcan. And then Arcan actually liked her, even though he hated all beautiful women, and those were his victims, were beautiful women. But he found Tawny desirable, though, actually. And so what ended up happening, right? So I'm not gonna tell the whole fucking story. I'm just kind of just jumping. And so, what is it? One day, Tawny had she was she was uh she was working at the department store and the fucking her friend or something like this was hypnotized by this guy, this little fucking midget dude, and he was fucking horrible to look at, but he was captivating. Like he was always with beautiful women and stuff. And her friend was talking to this dude. He had some type of hypnotizing ability. He was this like weird ass vampire, and the friend was talking to the guy, and the thing about his little trick is if you look in his eyes you see whatever it is or whoever it is that you find desirable. So for that woman, she was like seeing Brad Pitt, even though this dude looked like a fucking fucked up ass Danny DeVito, right? So Tawny was like, well, what the fuck is going on, what is going on here? Because the girl was driving her Mercedes with this little ugly dude in the car. And Tawny was trying to figure out what his secret was because she wanted somebody to love her so much. But soon she would find out, though. So she went out they drove and drove and drove, right? And they ended up into the middle of the forest in the darkness and stuff like this. And she lost track of the car. But then she was like, well, where's the car at? And then she found it again, but it was empty, and the lights were ding, 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 because the cars are open, the doors are open and stuff like this. And then she found her friend stuffed in some fucking drain. Like her whole body was just stuffed in there. And it was impossible for a human to do that. But for that little dude, it was nothing because he wasn't even human. And so he was standing there and he was like, "You seen me." And she's like, "No, don't hurt me." He's like, "I know you want my powers." So he was like, "I will give it to you, you know, if you let me have sex with you," or something like this. So she said, okay. So she did, and she had sex with this dude, but it was fucking crazy. Like he took her, and he was like a little midget, right? But he ended up like bending her legs over her head, breaking her legs, right, to where the flesh was like ripped off and stuff like this. Then he ripped her heart out, ate her heart while she was still living. Then he threw it up inside of her mouth, and that's how they created vampires in this fucking story. Now keep in mind, Arcan isn't a vampire. So then she becomes this thing, right? Well, she still looks the same, but she now has the abilities of that fucking guy. And so she starts thinking about how she can use it on Arcan. And so then that's how like they interlope both of their fucking little stories and shit like this. And it's got all sorts of little other mini stories within there, like with other characters, and how all their stories intersect. And it's really fucking good, man. It's a fucking really good book. One of my most favorite books, man. It's so crazy the way they describe shit in that book, man. I forgot, what's it, the author? Yeah, her name is Charlie Jacob. Charlie Jacob is the one that wrote it. She's a woman, actually. And her imagination is fucking out of this world, man. Those horror novels that I've read are fucking crazy. So a lot of times with my drawings, actually, I pull from those images that I have in my head from those books, and also the movies that I watch. I believe I've touched on this in some of my other videos. Yeah, I'm thinking about illustrating some characters from this one book series of books called City Infernal. And City Infernal is tight as hell, man. It's about hell, right? But hell is a gigantic fucking uh, demonic city. So the way that Edward Lee describes it in his book is like, you can think of like how civilization right here started like with trees, and it was just, there was no buildings and stuff like this. But then over time, man made it industrialized and stuff. So they said, well, why couldn't hell be like that? So at first it started off as this barren thing with lava and whatever, and over time Lucifer had created it into what they call a Mephistopheles. Yeah, and it's just like a gigantic fucking infernal city where they have fucking prostitution, fucking uh their own demonic drugs down there, and fucking nightclubs, but everything's all twisted and fucked up. And that shit is crazy as hell. Like the fucking the mental images that you get from that shit out of reading that book, it's out of this world, man. City Infernal, yeah, City Infernal, and what's that other shit? This Symbiotic Fascination, yeah, yeah, yeah. If you read, or even if you don't read, just get the shit on, what do you call that shit? Kindle, yeah. If you get it on Kindle and just listen to it, the audiobook, yo, that's just tight. Yeah, that's just tight. If you like horror stuff, yeah, I definitely fucking suggest those two, man. Definitely.